Tonight, we go back to a land where mountains trembled, where the earth cracked open under the weight of sin, and where a woman stood between salvation and destruction. She lived beside a prophet of Allah, ate with him, walked with him, prayed behind him, yet in her heart she carried a darkness even her husband could not see. When pure angels descended as honored guests, she betrayed her own home, whispered their arrival to a nation drowning in filth, and sealed not only the fate of an entire people, but her own. Her name was Waliha, the wife of Prophet Lūṭ, عليه السلام, a woman mentioned in the Qur'an, not for faith nor for righteousness, but for the most terrifying form of betrayal. Stay with us, because what happened to her was so severe, so catastrophic, that Allah made her story a warning until the end of time. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach hearts across the world. The earth had seen corruption before, but never like this. There were towns where people lied, kingdoms where people stole, and nations where arrogance blinded leaders, yet none of them sank as deeply into darkness as the city of Sodom. It was a place where shame died, where decency was mocked, and where sin was not hidden but celebrated. Men stood in open gatherings, committing acts no nation before them had ever imagined. They walked the streets without modesty, laughed at purity, and boasted about their desires as if rebellion itself were a badge of honor. The air felt heavy, thick with the stench of moral decay, and every night the echoes of their wickedness rose toward the sky. Into that world, Allah sent a man of purity, Prophet Lūṭ, عليه السلام. He was a stranger among them, yet a mercy to them. With a heart soft as rain and a voice steady as truth, he stood in their marketplaces, their gatherings and their homes, calling them back to the path every human soul is born upon. He reminded them of their nature, of the dignity Allah placed between a man and a woman, of the honor found in marriage and modesty. His words were gentle but firm, like a lantern in a storm. Fear Allah, do not disgrace yourselves, return to what He created for you, he pleaded again and again. But the people scoffed. They pointed at him, mocked him, laughed in crowds, and spread whispers behind his back. You forbid what we enjoy, they said. You want to change our way of life, leave us to our desires. Day by day, their arrogance grew. The more he warned them, the more they sank into their filth, gathering in groups where shame had no place, practicing their sin openly with pride, creating the first culture in human history to institutionalize immorality as entertainment. It was not just a sin they fell into, it became their identity. And inside the home of Prophet Lūṭ, عليه السلام, another trial was quietly unfolding. His wife, known in Israeliyat as Waliha, watched him preach, watched him warn, watched him cry for his people. But instead of her heart softening, it hardened. She was surrounded by the culture of Sodom, and slowly she began to prefer it. The laughter of the wicked pleased her more than the tears of her husband. The gatherings of the shameless appealed to her more than the purity he preached. When Lūṭ عليه السلام spoke of repentance, she felt burdened. When he spoke of morality, she felt resistance. When he spoke of Allah's wrath, she felt doubt. She lived beside a prophet, ate with him, walked with him, shared his home, yet in her chest was a heart drifting further and further from the light he carried. Outwardly, she remained his wife. Inwardly, she leaned toward the people who mocked him. While he stood alone in the night praying that Allah would guide his people, she sat quietly remembering the festivals of corruption, the gatherings of sin, the excitement of Sodom's unrestrained darkness. Prophet Lūṭ عليه السلام saw a nation drowning and stretched his hand to pull them from the edge. His wife saw the same darkness and chose to step closer to it. And long before a single stone fell from the sky, long before the earth turned over, Long before the angels descended, her heart had already begun its descent toward the fate Allah would later seal in the Qur'an. She lived in the home of a prophet, yet her heart beat for a people drowning in sin. Waliha, the wife of Prophet Lūṭ alayhi salam, carried a secret battle inside her chest that no one could see. To the world, she was the wife of a righteous man, a woman honored by the home she belonged to. She walked beside Lūṭ alayhi salam in public, greeted his guests, and lived under the same roof where revelation echoed and mercy descended. But beneath that quiet exterior, behind her soft gestures and familiar routines, her soul leaned toward a very different world, the world outside her door, the world of Sodom. Every time Lūṭ alayhi salam called his people to purity, her heart tightened. Every reminder of Allah's commands felt like a burden she did not wish to carry. She heard the warnings, the pleas, the reminders of accountability and punishment, but instead of trembling in fear or softening toward truth, she recoiled. The purity he preached felt suffocating. The boundaries he set felt like chains. And the more he called his people to righteousness, the more she longed for the noise, the laughter, the reckless freedom of the corrupt gatherings she had once enjoyed. In the streets, she found the attention and approval her heart desired. The wicked welcomed her. They spoke to her as one of their own. They joked with her, shared stories with her, and whispered rumors in her ear. She carried their secrets and protected their wickedness. Slowly, her loyalty shifted. She began to belong more to the people of Sodom than to the man chosen by Allah. What they celebrated, she admired. What they practiced, she defended. And what Lūṭ alayhi salam condemned, she silently despised. Inside her home, she hid her true feelings well. She smiled when needed. She nodded when expected. She maintained the appearance of a prophet's wife, respectful, composed, obedient. But inside, her heart had already crossed a dangerous boundary. She did not simply disagree with her husband's message, she rejected it. She did not merely struggle with the path of righteousness, she resented it. She did not only pity the people of Sodom, she sided with them. And then came the most dangerous part of her inner conflict, her quiet hatred for her husband's mission. She felt that his purity separated her from the world she loved. His warnings brought fear into a place where she wanted excitement. His discipline brought silence where she wanted noise. To her, he was not a savior. He was an interruption, a barrier between her and the sinful comforts she desired. So she played both sides. The obedient in this dual life, she sealed her fate long before the angels ever descended. The Qur'an does not mention her by name, but it gives her a title more terrifying than any name. Kanat min al-ghabirin. She was among the doomed, not because she sinned publicly like her people, but because she betrayed the truth privately while living beside a prophet. She chose darkness over light, rebellion over guidance, desire over revelation. And Allah recorded her betrayal as a warning that the heart which leans toward corruption, even in the house of a prophet, walks alone into destruction. Night had fallen over Sodom, but its darkness was nothing compared to the darkness in the hearts of its people. In the distance, along the dusty road that led into the doomed city, 3 travelers appeared, men of extraordinary beauty, faces unlike anything the people of Sodom had ever seen. Their features were pure, their presence dignified, their steps calm and deliberate. They looked like travelers seeking shelter, but they were not men at all. They were angels, messengers from the Lord of the heavens and the earth, sent with a mission that would shake the ground beneath Sodom until not a trace of it remained. When Prophet Lūṭ alayhi salam first saw them, his heart trembled, not out of fear of them, but out of fear for them. He knew his people. He knew their wickedness. He knew their lust and shamelessness. Handsome men were not safe in Sodom, and these travelers possessed a beauty that would ignite the desires of a corrupted nation. So he rushed to them, lowered his gaze in humility, and greeted them with honor. "You are not safe in this city," He whispered urgently, "Come with me, come to my home, do not stay in the streets tonight." The angels accepted his hospitality, even as they hid their purpose. They allowed him to lead them through the narrow alleys, past the drunken gatherings, past the whispers of filth, past the gazes that lingered too long, and every step Lūṭ alayhi took increased the weight on his chest. He knew if anyone saw these travelers, chaos would erupt. The people of Sodom were not like other nations who respected guests. They hunted them. Inside his home, Lūṭ alayhi quickly prepared a meal, urging the guests to remain hidden. He stood by the door, tense, listening for footsteps outside. His heart pounded as he silently prayed for protection, for them and for his own dignity as a host. But while he struggled to shield them, another pair of eyes watched with a very different intention. Waliha. When she saw the guests, something stirred in her. Not fear, not caution, but excitement. She had never seen men with such beauty. She knew exactly what their presence would do to her people, what kind of frenzy it would unleash. And instead of feeling horror, she felt a twisted satisfaction. In her heart, a dark opportunity formed, an opportunity to gain favor with the wicked ones she admired, to bring them news that would thrill them, to feed their desires just as they fed hers. Lūṭ alayhi moved anxiously, trying to hide the guests, whispering for calm. But Waliha's mind raced with a single intention. This was her moment. She slipped away, silently, unnoticed by her husband. Whether she whispered through the door, whether she lit a signal, whether she simply left the home and ran to her people, Allah knows best. But the result was the same. The people of Sodom heard the news. There are strangers in Lūṭ's house, men unlike any we have ever seen. The spark was lit. The disease of their hearts erupted like fire. And with one treacherous act, Waliha placed herself on the side of a nation Allah had already destined for destruction. What came next? The pounding on the door, the mob rushing in madness, the shouts, the chaos, all began with the choice of one woman who lived in the home of a prophet, but belonged to the darkness outside. The doom of a nation began the moment she betrayed her own doorstep. She moved through the house like a shadow, silent enough that even a prophet would not sense the storm forming behind him. The angels sat inside as honored guests, their beauty veiled yet still radiant enough to shake the corrupted hearts of Sodom if ever they were seen. Lūṭ alayhi tried to steady his breath, whispering dua under his tongue as he glanced from the door to his guests and back again. He was racing against time, hoping, begging that his people would not learn of their arrival. But Waliha already knew, and every second she watched those guests, her curiosity twisted into excitement, and her excitement into betrayal. Some say she slipped out through a back door. Others say she walked to the roof and lit a small signal fire, a secret sign used by the wicked of Sodom. And some narrations say she simply went outside and whispered to her neighbors, who whispered to theirs, until the entire city pulsed with dangerous hunger. Whatever the method, the message was clear and deadly. "There are strangers in Lūṭ's house," she whispered. "Men unlike any I've ever seen." Her words spread through Sodom like poison. In dark corners and crowded gatherings, in alleys and meeting places, the people paused, then rushed. Their hearts, diseased with desire, pounded wildly in their chests. They did not question whether the news was true. They did not hesitate. They stormed toward the house of a prophet as if answering the call of their lust. Within minutes, the silence of the night shattered. Lūṭ alayhi heard them before he saw them, footsteps thundering, voices rising, laughter echoing with wickedness. And then came the pounding, fists slammed against his door, bodies pushed against the walls. The home trembled under the weight of an entire nation demanding something filthy, something unspeakable, something no human being should ever desire. "Bring them out to us," they shouted. "Send your guests to us. We know they are inside." Lūṭ alayhi salam stood at the door, trembling, not from fear for himself, but from shame. The sanctity of his home was being violated, the purity of his guests threatened. He cried to his people with a voice filled with agony, "These are my guests. Do not disgrace me. Fear Allah. Is there not a single righteous man among you?" But the people pushed harder. The mob grew louder. Their depravity drowned out every word of truth. Inside the house, Waliha watched it all unfold and felt no regret. She had chosen her side, and it was not the side of her husband, nor the side of the angels, nor the side of Allah. Her betrayal was complete. The Qur'an later describes her deed with a single devastating word, khanathuma. She betrayed them. This betrayal was not adultery, it was far deeper, far darker. It was the betrayal of faith, of mission, of loyalty to a prophet of Allah. She did not protect truth. She aided falsehood. She did not guard revelation. She exposed it. She did not stand with righteousness. She stood with a nation drowning in sin. And for that one act, that one moment where she sided with evil against the messenger in her own home, her fate was sealed long before the first stone fell from the sky. The house shook under the weight of the mob, their fists hammering against the door as if they wanted to tear the walls apart. Lūṭ alayhi salam stood between his guests and the chaos outside, his heart pounding, his voice cracking as he pleaded with a people who no longer listened to reason nor feared the wrath of Allah. The crowd had lost all sense of humanity. Desire had swallowed their minds whole, and in that moment of desperation, when the door trembled and the night filled with screams, the angels finally spoke. Their voices were calm, steady, powerful in a way no human voice could ever be. "O Lūṭ, do not fear," they told him. "We are messengers from your Lord." The words froze the air. A wave of relief washed over the prophet, yet with it came a tremor of awe. These were not ordinary guests. They were beings of light, sent with a command written before time itself. They stood, and with a single gesture, a single motion unseen by mortal eyes, they struck the mob with blindness. The screams outside twisted from lust to terror as men stumbled in the darkness, clawing at their faces, crying out in pain. They staggered through the streets of Sodom, helpless, confused, grasping for walls and falling over one another. Lūṭ alayhi salam looked upon the scene with trembling hands. The punishment had begun. The angels turned to him again. "The decree of your Lord has fallen upon these people. Their destruction is no longer delayed." The words hung heavy in the air, a sentence, a warning, a promise. The angels commanded him to act quickly. "Take your family and leave this city in the deep of night. Move without hesitation, and do not look back. Not one of you." The command was simple, but it would reveal every heart, pure or corrupt. Lūṭ alayhi salam rushed to prepare his home. He called his daughters, gathered their belongings, urged them to move swiftly. The city outside was spiraling into chaos. Blinded men wandering the streets, curses echoing, cries rising as the first tremors of divine punishment began to ripple through the earth. Inside the home, fear and urgency filled every corner, except in the heart of one woman, Waliha. The warning from the angels reached her ears, but not her soul. She followed the group mechanically, her feet moving with them, but her heart remained chained to Sodom, to the noise, the sin, the people she admired, the wickedness she secretly supported. Allah had not commanded them merely to leave. He had commanded them not to look back. It was a test, a separation of the righteous from the doomed. The believers would walk forward with fear and obedience. The corrupt would turn their heads toward the world they could not bear to lose. As Lūṭ alayhi salam led his family into the darkness, guided only by faith and the whispered urgings of the angels, every step took them farther from a city, moments away from extinction. The sky above them began to tremble. The distant rumble grew. Something ancient and terrifying was awakening by the command of Allah. The moment had come when hearts would be exposed. For the believers, salvation. For Waliha, the consequence of a lifetime of secret rebellion. Her steps followed the Prophet, but her heart had never left Sodom. They fled into the night with only the moon to light their path. Lūṭ alayhi salam at the front, his daughters close behind him, and the angels urging them to move faster, not to slow down, not to hesitate. Behind them, the city groaned like a dying beast. The earth trembled under their feet. Winds rose with a sound that carried both warning and wrath. Every believer who walked that night felt the weight of Allah's command. Do not look back. It was the final test, a test not of footsteps, but of hearts. Waliha walked among them, but she did not belong with them. Her pace was slow, her breath uneven, her eyes drawn again and again toward the darkness behind her. For Lūṭ alayhi salam, every moment was filled with grief for a nation that rejected him. For his daughters, every second was soaked with fear, their hearts beating with the hope of survival. But for Waliha, the night felt unbearable. She could not understand how everything she loved could end so suddenly. The laughter of her people, the gatherings she enjoyed, the world of sin she cherished. It was all slipping away, carried behind her in the growing roar of divine punishment. And then it happened. She stopped. Maybe it was disbelief, maybe it was longing, maybe it was a desperate curiosity to see if the warnings she mocked were true. Maybe she simply could not resist watching the destruction of the city she had chosen over her husband's message. Tafsir tells us she looked back, not with obedience, but with attachment. Her heart betrayed her feet. She turned her head towards Sodom in the moment when the gates of the heavens opened. A stone, marked and chosen by Allah, descended from the sky with terrifying precision. It struck her where she stood, silencing her forever. The shock froze her body. The fear seized her soul. And then the earth beneath Sodom convulsed with a force no human had ever witnessed. In a single divine command, the angel Jibril alayhi salam lifted the entire city on the tip of his wing, higher and higher, until the people of the lowest heaven heard the screams of their animals. Then he flipped it upside down. The land that once stood tall fell upon itself with a crushing roar. And before the dust could settle, the sky rained stone after stone, sigil, baked clay missiles sent with accuracy known only to Allah. They fell upon every corner of the ruined city, upon every home, upon every sinner, upon every soul that rejected purity and mocked their prophet. Not a single one escaped, except those who walked with Lūṭ alayhi salam. And Waliha was not among them. Her fate was sealed the moment she chose corruption over truth, the moment she chose a doomed nation over the prophet in her own home. Qur'an 66:10 would forever record her legacy, not by name, but by judgment. A woman who betrayed her prophet and gained nothing from the righteousness she lived beside. Her story became a warning until the end of time, that proximity to guidance means nothing if the heart walks toward darkness. Her story did not end in the ruins of Sodom. It lived on, carried through scripture, preserved by the words of Allah himself, recited on tongues across continents and centuries. While the stones of sigil buried her people, and while her own life ended in the darkness she chose, her memory became something far greater than the tragedy of a single woman. Allah immortalized her story in the Qur'an, not to shame her, but to warn humanity, a warning so sharp, so necessary, that it stands beside the stories of the greatest prophets. Allah did not mention her by name. He did not describe her appearance, her age, or the details of her life. He gave her no identity except the one she earned, the woman who lived with a prophet but did not live by his truth. And that alone was enough for her place in history. The wisdom is terrifying in its clarity. Being near a prophet does not save a corrupted heart. You can live beside truth and still choose falsehood. You can hear revelation daily and still walk toward destruction. You can sit at a table with a messenger of Allah and remain untouched by guidance. Her story proves that proximity is not piety and that salvation is not inherited. It is earned through obedience, sincerity, and submission. Her betrayal was not the betrayal of a wife against her husband. It was something far more dangerous, the betrayal of faith. When Allah described her as one who betrayed, the betrayal was not in marriage but in allegiance. She sided with those who mocked Allah instead of those who served Him. She protected a sinful nation instead of standing with divine truth. She hid guidance and supported corruption, and for that, her fate became a lesson carved into revelation. Allah preserved her in the Qur'an to show us that betrayal in belief destroys a person more deeply than betrayal in love. Hearts die long before bodies do, and her heart had died long before a stone ever touched her. But her story did not stand alone. It became a mirror for every generation, proving that when a society normalizes sin, corruption spreads like wildfire. When immorality becomes entertainment, when shamelessness becomes culture, when truth becomes mocked, and when prophets are ignored, civilizations collapse from within. Sodom was not destroyed simply because of one sin. It was destroyed because sin became identity, arrogance became law, and purity became a stranger. And through the fall of Waliha, Allah shows us that destruction does not begin with cities falling or stones descending. It begins when hearts turn away from the light they once knew. So her story stands as a warning, echoing through time. A heart that chooses darkness will carry its own ruin. A soul that follows corruption will walk into its own grave. A person who stands beside truth but refuses to embrace it will find no shelter when punishment arrives. And the final lesson Allah gives us, the lesson hidden in her fate, her betrayal, her destruction, is simple, eternal, and terrifyingly true. Purity protects, darkness destroys, not from the outside, but from within.